But I do believe that brands should invest in the people that invest in them. And I think branded storytelling is a way to do that if it's done well. If it's done well and if it's done earnestly and with integrity, which is really hard to do as a corporation or as a company.
Lauren Todd, filmmaker, producer, and powerful storyteller, joins me today to discuss the power of branded content. She seriously is an amazing storyteller, and I'd highly recommend you check out her work producing After Skid Row, Path of Purpose, and Groundwork, all of which feel cinematic, original, and real. She believes telling one story is not simply an art, it is an act of courage. Her heart is marked and sealed to champion this act. Guys, I had an awesome time talking with Lauren. Enjoy the episode. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. I'd like to open up this episode with a quote. To tell one's story is not simply an art, it is an act of courage.
Sounds familiar. I recognize that quote because it's on my website. Yeah, no, I mean, I think so. People, I think, underestimate, yeah, just like the courage that it takes, one, to know your story, the courage that it takes to accept the reality of your history, and then the further courage that it takes to then either share or promote or publicize or offer your story, you know what I mean, to other people in some sort of way that they can understand. And so I think and very strongly believe that when people are like seeking opportunities to testify or talk about, not just talk about themselves in a self-centered way, but talk about themselves in a way in their histories in a way that connects themselves to other people, it is it's a very brave thing to do because it takes a lot. Even things that we feel maybe in our own lives, because we live in such a comparative social nature, right? Today with social media and just the amount of information that we're receiving and digesting, the amount of stories that we're seeing every day, ours can feel small and can get lost, in that sort of like amalgamation of, just this heap of like, craziness that we're ingesting every day that we probably shouldn't at the rate and like quantities that we are. And so when people are like, desiring to tell their stories or taking that first step, even if it's in small ways to us that feel smaller, that feel minuscule, it's really huge. Like it's a big thing to admit something about yourself that is honest or truthful. You know what I mean? It's a huge thing to admit that a part of your history is what it is and that, you know what I mean? And that you can't change it or fantasize it into something else that it's not, or like to accept the entirety of your story as it's being written and who you are and as it's being authored, I think is a really, really big deal and takes a lot of courage. Yeah, so that's what it means. I mean, I just think I love people. I love people when they feel like they can. I don't even know if own their stories is the right word, but um, take accountability for their stories. I think that's just such a big. It's like a level up, it's like you've reached a different sort of thing when you're like, "Yeah, no, I take accountability for who I am and what I've been through and what I haven't been through and what I have yet to go through," and, without making it into some weird fantasy, but just accepting your reality as it is, and still being able to call it worthy and beautiful, I think is a really hard thing to do, and so I think it requires courage.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And to what extent do you think that's a skill versus something that you're born with or that you
Mm.
have?
Yeah, I think, that's a good question. I think all of us, this might sound corny. I think we all have the capacity, you know what I mean? I mean, legitimately, we are all storytellers because we all bear stories, like we are living out stories as we speak. Like, I don't know what's going on in your life, and you don't know what's going on in my life beyond, like the moment that we're sharing together. But there's a story that's being lived out that we know of because of what's happened and that we have no clue of because of what's going to happen. And so I think inherently, we're all storytellers because we are all living through one in very unique ways. I do think skill I don't even know if skill, but just maybe consistency or practice of, like, learning to tell your story, um, in an honest, again, and truthful way, um, plays a part into, like, what it means to be a storyteller. Like, I don't think you have to be skilled in a certain way in order to tell a good story, because there's a lot of there's a lot of cultures, there's a lot of, like, generations, like, I think about my grandparents' generation or even my, like, parents' generation, like, my mom is a nurse, she didn't, like, necessarily go to school to, like, learn how to tell a story, but she's a great storyteller, and I don't know where that came from, in a quantifiable, pinpoint way, um, but she loves to tell stories, in just her everyday life when even we talk after work of like, "Hey, how did today go?" And she can tell me, you know what I mean? Just like, I think those sorts of things are inherent, in us more maybe than they're explicitly taught, but I think they can be more explicitly practiced, um, that help you, again, just become more comfortable with learning how to, like, tell stories to connect with other people because that's what stories do, they, like, connect us?
Oh, definitely. And
Yeah.
I wanted to add to that. For people can express their stories in different ways, right? There's
Mhm.
orally expressing your story.
Right.
There's showing it on film. It's kind of
Mhm.
ironic. I'm a podcast host, but I'm not the
Mhm.
best storyteller.
Mhm.
Versus
Okay.
filmmaking, it's a
Yeah.
different category.
Right.
Now, you mentioned earlier on knowing your story, accepting it, and then
Mhm.
having the courage to publicize that
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I guess and when I say publicize, I don't necessarily mean again, because we live in a media heavy context right now, with social media and like everybody's trying to be an influencer and everything needs to be public and your business has to be out in the streets. And that's not necessarily what I mean. I just mean publicized in terms of like it comes from in here to out here. So whether that's between you and another person or you and a group or you and the page, you know what I mean? Like I think, um, yeah, to get to the point to where your story doesn't just become again, like this like rehearsal or fantasy or like fiction in your head, right? Or in your heart, but that it actually um yeah, that you give like breath to it, I think or life to it a different kind of way. I think that's like a different level of it's just like a different gear that like you've shifted into like as a storyteller because there's a lot of stuff that ideas and dreams that like everybody has in their like day-to-day life that are fleeting that they can't shake, like and everything in between. But I think learning to, first like receive, that and then dream about it and tend to it and, not let the idea go and then allowing it to like kind of come forth or like be birthed from you in a different kind of way or publicized in that way, just be made public, private from public, I think is, yeah, just like kind of the not ultimate, but just like another level of, like how our stories are like shared and how we connect with other people is when we make that decision to be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna like actually let this like leave me, in a kind of way where I can't control the narrative, which I think, um, yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
And especially the connecting with people part, that
Mhm,
vulnerability of telling your story.
mhm.
I think that sparks the deepest connections with others.
Yeah.
And you've dedicated your career to storytelling.
Mhm,
I'd like to know your journey as a filmmaker
mhm.
or about
Yeah.
your journey as a filmmaker.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Well, it's I feel like very roundabout and it's not linear at all, which I think is often the case with a lot of filmmakers. Um, I didn't go to film school. I didn't, have family that were in film that knew how to operate cameras. I had a camera that was gifted to me when I was, like, in high school, I think, like, a Nikon, like, one of those, like, DSLR, like, the simple basic with the 18 to 55 millimeter, like, kit lens, like, that sort of thing, and I remember, like, stealing a friend's camera in high school who used to take pictures and just being interested in that world, but I didn't know how to access that world, like you see it on TV, you see it in movies, and it feels so far away and so far off. And so it just always was that for me. Like it was like, oh, film is a thing that certain people do, or that is only in this like fantasy land of Hollywood. Like that's sort of what I thought. And so I've always been interested in storytelling. I grew up a writer and a musician, and that meant a lot to me. It shaped and like formulated everything that I believe about storytelling and film. Even like I'm so musically motivated by film and sounds and writing. Means a lot to me, and so that was sort of, kind of the extent to which I was like, "Oh, okay, like I'm creative in that way, but I have to like be serious and, go through high school and get good grades." And I went to like a prep school. So we wore uniforms and we were all about like getting into like every UC possible in the California, college system. And yeah, so I ended up going to Ohio State. So I didn't stay in California because I wanted to like
Yeah.
go somewhere different, have a different experience. Because I grew up in a really small town
What
called
town?
Victorville.
Victorville.
Nobody knows, Michael, where
Nope.
it is. Okay, I barely know where it is.
Yeah.
People in California, when you mention that, they're like, Victorville. They're like, yeah, I think you're like, "You know what? I stopped there for gas on the way to Vegas." I'm like, "Yes, that's us." And so, like, that's the vibe. In fact, there was a viral video of, Schoolboy Q. Are you familiar with him? He's a rapper that was signed to, Top Dog Entertainment, the same label that Kendrick used to be signed to.
Oh,
He
shout
has
out
this
Schoolboy Key.
Oh, yeah, Schoolboy Q, yeah.
Oh,
He has
Q,
this
Q.
he has this, like, video when Vine, RIP Vine, was a thing.
R.I.P. Yeah.
Of him, like, taking his daughter to, like, a softball tournament, and he's driving through Victorville, because I think the softball tournament was there in, like, the county or whatever, and he is, like, ragging he's like, "Do people live here? What is going on? This is, like, a"
No.
and that's the vibe. We, like, as high school students, we just couldn't wait to leave, because everyone thought we used to call it Victimville, because if you, like, stayed there too long, you would get stuck, and so it was like it was safe, roughly, probably to, like, our rose-colored glass eyes, but it was so boring. We had, like, one mall, and you could go to the mall and, like, walk it, round trip in 5 to 10 minutes, and so that was the vibe, so I wanted to, like, go somewhere else, so I went to, like, the complete opposite where, like, I didn't know anybody. It was, like, a massive school, like, 50, 60,000 kids. Ohio State has just undergraduate level, and, I decided I was gonna, like, study medicine because I loved medicine, I loved taking care of people, and, um, yeah, so I studied English because I also still loved writing, and I kinda knew intuitively in a way, I knew that I wanted to be connected to writing and storytelling, even though I was, like, very passionate about medicine and passionate about health and healing and people, but I
Why
knew
were you passionate about it?
um, probably, one, because of, like, the household that I grew up in. My mom's a
Mhm.
nurse, my sister's a nurse, and so I think I saw that growing up, and it, moved me in a different way, but I also just, like there's maybe just something more natural in me and, like, who I was that I just enjoy taking care of people, like, I love helping people. I've always been that way since I was a kid. I've always been, like, a really big advocate for, like, other people, and other people's stories, even though, I didn't quite understand everything as a kid. I remember in 3rd grade, I had a best friend named Rabia, who she was Muslim and I was Christian and in a Christian household. And I remember she was fasting for Ramadan and I was like, I'm gonna fast with you. I didn't know anything about, but she was like the only Muslim girl in our class and I didn't want her to feel alone. And so I was like, yeah, let's fast. And I remember going on to my mom being like, yeah, I'm fasting for Ramadan. And she's like, what? Like it just, but I just loved, advocating and like being a champion for other people from like a super young age. And so medicine felt like a good entryway into that because I also enjoyed like science and math and things like that. I've always been like very multi hyphenate. And so studying English and then pursuing like science at the same time just felt right for me or challenging.
That's no easy combo.
No, and it wasn't, Michael, because I'm not a doctor. You know what I mean? So that should tell you something. But it was really fun and it helped me, I think, round out who I am, in a different kind of way. Yeah, so I studied English. I loved it. I also was pre-med, so I got traumatized by OChem and chemistry and biology and all those other, physics, all the classes that you have to be hazed by when you're a pre-medical student. Um, and I discovered in my like English track, there was like a new study, or like a new like academic genre of study called narrative medicine that was founded by this doctor named Dr. Rita Sharon at Columbia University. And it was the study of narratology and how the study of learning how to craft a narrative, how that can help heal and establish better relationships between doctors and patients. I thought that was so one, it was like super niche because I was like, that's crazy that somebody decided to like make that a whole academic arm. I was like,
Yeah.
it was so specific, but you know, as especially in Western medicine, like we have such a colorful, I would say,
To say
history.
the least.
Yeah, to say the least, in terms of healthcare and medicine and the trust that exists or does not exist between doctors and patients and healthcare systems and peoples. And so I thought that was like, oh my God, yeah, let's do it. Like storytelling is it. Let's figure out like how you can tell stories that help bridge gaps and reconcile people, people groups that, because
In medicine, or is this like more?
in
Or are we pushing
medicine,
more generally?
In medicine, that was, like, the study specifically for, like, narrative medicine, but I think the chord that it struck was like, "Oh, this can be done everywhere else as well." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which that's what art is, but I think just seeing it again, it felt like a perfect marriage of, like, English and pre-med and the thing that I was pursuing, but then it also
The
felt like
stars aligned. I'm getting
yeah.
that. I'm getting that vibe.
Yes, yeah, and so it just kinda opened up, like, a new way of thinking about, like, what storytelling could look like and the sorts of sectors that it could kind of touch that were not just creative or traditionally creative, sectors, if
Oh
you
man,
will, like
yeah.
film or, painting or whatever, or books or, and so, that was kind of that, and at the time, my senior year, even though I loved medicine and I loved what I was studying, I was still kind of, like, on the fence about going to med school, and that is not the thing to be on the fence about because you're gonna commit the next decade plus of your life and a ton of money, and so I was like, Maybe I should wait for a little bit before I decide to do this," and I worked, like, a really basic admin assistant job after graduation at Ohio State for a couple years, and then also was like working as an event assistant with a local company that's no longer here, but that really like changed my life because that's where I met a bunch of folks who were in film from one of the events that we had planned. And so that kind of shifted a lot of things for me because it exposed me to filmmakers, that I didn't really have access to in Columbus, and then it also exposed me to the role of a producer. I didn't even know that was a thing, And so I remember our company was selected for this trip to plan in Seychelles, which is in East Africa, and it's a little island, off the coast of like Ethiopia and Eritrea, like that, those countries. And um, the lady who had hired us, she was the first Black woman on record to travel to every country in the world. And so she was celebrating with Seychelles, which was her last country, and she had put this like pitch, RFP out there for like companies to basically say like, "Hey, send me a pitch of like how you would handle this and I'll choose somebody to plan this." And so she chose us and we flew out and,
What was the pitch?
it was more so like a kind of like a quote, sort of, but it just was like, "How would you handle this? Like, tell me about yourself." She just kinda made
Yeah.
it sort of like a public sort of opportunity, like a
Like
job
the
posting.
contractors do, right?
Yeah,
To get the
yeah, so basically like a job posting that she was like, "Hey, I'm looking for an event planner. If you're interested, contact me and let's talk." And so she ended up choosing our company and, we went, and when you're, like, on vacation with a bunch of strangers in, like, a place that you don't know, I've never been. It's like summer camp, you know what I mean? Because you guys are like, you don't know each other, but you're all like best friends, and everybody's talking about their lives and how everything's gonna be different when they get back, you know? Everyone's making all these changes, you know, and everyone's hyping each other up. They're like, "Yeah, you quit that job," you know? So it was like those sorts of vibes. And there were filmmakers there who had just won Emmys, who were like signed to UTA and Tool, and you know what I mean? So it was like a huge it was just like a very diverse group of people who were there, and there were also folks who weren't filmmakers, but everyone just was, like, having a good time, you know, celebrating this woman, Jessica Nabongo, and, um, there were conversations, you know, that I just was having with folks, and they're like, "Hey, you're actually really good at what you do. Did you know that you could do this in film as well?" And I was like, "No clue," and they're like, "You should really think about it," you know, like, that's called a producer, like, what you're doing now as an event planner or an event coordinator, it's like the same thing, but just in film, and so that sort of sent me on my, like, journey towards film, which landed me back in Columbus for a year, and I was, like, very determined, even though I wasn't in the place that I needed to be because it was Columbus, um, I still was, like I still had it in my, like, mind. I was like, "No, I'm gonna figure out how to, like, get into film. I don't know how," and I'd had these connections, but they couldn't really help me because, again, I was in Ohio, and so they're like, "We don't really know what's going on in Ohio. If you come to LA or New York, you know, hit me up, but otherwise, you know, do your thing and you kinda make your choice." And so I was very, like, still, again, not in the right place, but was like I had, like, scheduled I remember, um 'cause it's funny. I remember I had scheduled, like, calendar reminders to text certain people every, like, 2 months, just so I wouldn't forget and so that they wouldn't forget me. Even though I wasn't in LA and I wasn't quite in the right place, I was like, I you know, eventually, like, something has to shake, and so I just would be like, "Hey, how are things going with X, Y, and Z show? Hey, how are things going with Blase Skip commer" you know, like, just checking in. 95% of the time, they wouldn't respond, you know, but it just was the, like, practice of, like, trying to not be forgotten and keeping you front of mind, you know, so that when something does come up, people are like, "Oh, I remember that girl who's been harassing me for the last 12 months. She's really interested in this." And when COVID happened, in 2020, it sort of catapulted me to move back home because I was like, very far and had been away from my family for a while, even though I would visit, you know, for holidays. I think the pandemic sort of just like yeah, it just, like, catalyzed me to, like, wanna be closer to my family. Nobody knew what was going on at the time, you know, or, like, what would happen or you know, it was a scary time, and so I was like, "I'm gonna move back home, at least permanently," you know, I didn't have plans to come back, and so I was in LA, and maybe, like, a month later, one of the filmmakers who's, like, a director, producer, actor who had just won an Emmy, he was like, "Hey, I have a free job for you that just came up. It's a feature. I know you've never done anything like this before, but it's like a coordinator role. Do you wanna do it?" And I was like, "Whoa," and so it just was you know, but it was that sort of thing of just, like, right place, right time, you know, right moment, even though it was, like, a really scary time where nobody knew what was happening, it sort of worked out in the time when it probably really shouldn't have worked out because COVID, everything was shut down. Nobody was filming unless they were like this, you know, because they were like, "We don't know if we can trust you to like if we are on the same page about, you know, health and hygiene and, you know, things like that." And so I just had a lot of really great people and a lot of really weird favor, you know what I mean, with strangers who didn't know me but trusted me and promoted me, you know, to certain places and opened up doors and things like that for me to get involved. And so, yeah, I got involved and was a PA for a couple years, doing that, and then got a job with the Discovery Channel on a reality TV show that was interesting. I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
What was the interesting show?
I mean, it's on my you can see it on my portfolio. It was Gold Rush, you
Gotcha.
know, I mean, it's not a secret, but it just was a very difficult, to say the least. I would say it's a difficult job. It taught me a lot. It felt like, you know, trial by fire, by drowning, by you know? Like, all the sort of torturous things, it just was hard, but it taught me, like, kinda everything that I know, and I remember there was a first AD who had only been there for a short time for various reasons, but we had worked together for a little bit, and he was kinda like he pulled me aside, after a couple weeks, and he was like, "Hey, I know there's a lot going on, and this is, like, a tough job and whatever." He's like, "But you're killing it, and I need you to know that you're fine, like, you'll be fine." You know what I mean? Like, you literally can do anything because 'cause I'm watching you work, and I know you're not, maybe where you wanna be and you're just doing coordinator stuff, but you're actually, like, killing it, and that was sort of, like, confirmation that I wasn't getting that I needed to know that I wasn't, like, totally, just, like, flushing my life down the toilet and, like, never gonna have a future in film, and so, that sort of really kind of, like, catapulted me and encouraged me in a different kind of way, and, um, I ended up going back to LA, doing more coordinator stuff at the time, and then ended up getting connected with Gnarly Bay, which was who I'd been with for the last, like, few years, was a coordinator for them, for a little while, and then quickly became a producer, partially because of need, but also partially because I was, like, at the time, doing a lot of I was a coordinator, but I was working with producers and doing a lot of their job, you know, that I think they were like, "Oh, you actually can produce, like, you can kinda handle the level of responsibility, that this requires," and so, yeah, that's been, like, my journey in film for
Yeah.
the last 5 years, which is crazy to think it's only been 5. Yeah.
It's jam-packed.
I know, dude, I told you, yeah, like,
Jam-packed.
for sure.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Um, I I loved hearing about you reaching out and continuously checking in with
Yeah,
your contacts. I think that's huge in any industry
yeah,
whatsoever,
mhm.
and I I think it's a very unique perspective coming into filmmaking with an English and pre-med background.
Yeah,
To me, it teaches you how to problem solve,
mhm.
cram a lot of information. It teaches you to be
Yeah,
more analytical. So I can see
yeah,
how that
mm,
like natural shift came towards
mm,
event coordination and
yeah,
that merging into more of a production role, right? But
mhm,
now as a producer, I'm assuming there's also more of a creative
mhm,
part to the role.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, for sure.
How have you adjusted over time to now wearing a more creative hat?
Yeah, I mean, I think well. I mean, I think my, like,
I like
sweet
the
spot.
confidence behind that too.
Yeah, I think I've always been a creative person, I've always loved artists and am an artist myself, even though it took me a very long time to admit that or confess that, because I just
Yeah.
thought because I was production and a producer and a planner and administrative, I was like, "Oh, I'm just like, I'm just an admin. I'm just like the
It's what
behind
you
the
were
scenes."
saying, accepting your story.
Yeah, no, legitimately. And I think producers are some of the most creative people that exist because you have to, like, I know it feels like a not sexy job, you know what I mean? But depending on the type of producer that you are and where your hand, because, there's a million different roles. Some are more cosmetic than others, like EPs. People give out EP titles like nobody's business. Like Drake is an EP on Euphoria. Drake's not awesome. You know what I mean? Drake is just giving money to them. He's not Drake has never stepped, maybe he has,
Uh,
I don't know, but he's
yeah.
just giving money. Like Drake is not doing anything for
Uh,
Euphoria
I
beyond
know.
funding the show. And so, like, just stuff like that, it sometimes it's more positioning than it is actually functional.
Mhm.
um, but I think still in, like, the most kind of, like, general form of producing, if you're, like, really involved in stewarding and shepherding a project, you have to think creatively because you cannot only think logistically, like, you have to be thinking about how to bring this thing to life, like, that's your job, producer. Like, somebody comes to you, they say, "Hey, I have this idea, I have this seed, how can we make it happen?" And you go, "Great, amazing." And then you figure it out and you ask a bunch of questions and you poke holes and you try to make it, bigger, and then you scale back and then you go big. Like, there's just so much creativity and creative thinking I feel like that producers have to do that people don't really think goes into the role. And so for me, like, entering into a space from, like, a more strictly analytical, strictly administrative, like, into a more creative space. It just felt natural, and it felt like again, that marriage of, like, English and pre-med. It just felt like it made sense, of like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this you do like both, and you are multi-hyphenate, and you do kinda straddle a line a little bit, and so this might be a good role, to sort of, like, at least enter into the world of film to see if you like." Yeah, so I think I've adjusted pretty well, and I think I still have a lot to learn. Like, that's also part of what I love about producing and what I love about where I am is that I have not in any way, shape, or form hit my ceiling, and I am, like, very still hungry to learn more, and, like, to learn from producers who are better than me and who know more than me and people who have done features. I've never done a feature, but I want to. I've never done an episodic series in a televised broadcast way, but I would like to. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that I wanna do that I just wanna, like, eat everything up, just to see what it's like, see what I like and what I don't like, and, yeah, I think all of that requires creativity in different kinds of ways.
Yeah, and a lot of producers, directors,
Mhm.
high-level filmmakers that I've studied, they have that start in the commercial
Yeah.
industry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's how you move, I guess,
Mhm.
for the
Mhm.
most part.
Yeah.
Now, I've had the pleasure of watching you produce some really, really cool pieces of branded content. We're talking
Mhm.
like North Face, Cannondale,
Mhm.
Oakley. And to me, these are such high quality productions with
Mhm.
very deep, meaningful, and impactful stories. Why do you think brands should invest more money, or if they should, invest more money into branded content?
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think brands here's what I'll say, I think brands should invest in their communities and um in their audiences, whether that looks like branded film or branded content or branded storytelling. I think that depends on if that's right for the audience, for the people that they're reaching, for their customers, for their consumer base. But I do believe that brands should invest in the people that invest in them, and I think branded storytelling is a way to do that, if it's done well. If it's done well and if it's done, earnestly and with integrity, which is really hard to do as a corporation or as a company, especially nowadays, again, because it's so easy to make money, especially if you have a lot of like brand history. If you're like a company that's like killing it already, just and you're making money and your goal is just to make more money, you know what I mean? Like, it's really easy just to get caught up in that. Like, it's different for, like, independent businesses who are like, "Yeah, our goal is just to kinda, like, keep the lights on," and to, like, make our mark, and to that's a different position than, Nike or you know what I mean? Like, it's different, and so you have different priorities, and if you're at that sort of Nike, Oakley kinda level where you're just like, "Yeah, we're just making money at this point," like, "We're good, we're kinda settled," um how much money is really more so the question that we're kind of asking, and if we can sort of survive the tide of trends changing at lightning speeds because of the way that media and information is disseminated and gathered and digested and, you know, all that stuff. I think if you're a brand or a company like that, it is harder to be more earnest and integral. It's not impossible. I just think it's a temptation to think like, "Oh, this is a strategy that can get us more money," which is not what brand storytelling is only for. Like, we're a business, we get it, or like you're a business and we understand like your goal is to make money, but if that is the only thing that that you're thinking about in telling a story in a branded way, people will know, and they'll be able to tell. And so if you're not willing to invest in your communities and give them something that is valuable to them that they actually need, not something that you're trying to upsell them on or something that you're trying to convince them that they need that actually has no impact or benefit in their lives, then I think branded storytelling has a place. But if you're just trying to, like hack it, as a way to, again, make more money and become more profitable than the already, 50 billion that you're making a year, yeah, you probably should reconsider your strategy a little bit because it's cute and it's flashy and it's exciting, you know what I mean? And it sounds good because linked with some person who lost their leg. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds cool. It's amazing. It sounds like a really good thing to do, but it's like, why are you doing it? And if it's not to, again, invest into the people who are legitimately investing their dollars, time, attention, resources, efforts, whatever into you, then you probably should really think if that's the right strategy for like how to connect with your audience, you know?
And I mean, I fully agree with everything you said. It's also it's also building trust. Like
Mhm.
by showing you don't have any other intentions except to support some sort of project that shares your company's values, at least myself as a consumer, if I see that you're not trying to get anything out of me, you're just trying to show me what you're about in an
Mhm.
authentic way,
Mhm.
I'm way more likely to A, purchase your product, support
Mhm.
it for a long time,
Mhm.
and recommend it to other people. I'm just saying
Mhm.
subconsciously because you're
Yeah.
definitely right. Like on an intuitive level as humans, we have that BS filter. Like we can see if someone's trying to
Yeah.
get something out of us or feel. Maybe sometimes not see, but like we have that feeling inside.
Mhm.
Like I was watching what you did with Oakley, right? Literally, I forgot how long, like 7 minutes, I think.
Mhm.
Last like 3 seconds, Oakley said, "Hey, we support these guys." I thought that was super cool because it's
Mhm.
subconsciously in the back of my head. I see what they're about.
Mhm.
I think that's genius, and to me,
Mhm.
that's where more money should go. It really needs to go more into branded content because A, it's enabling filmmakers to do great quality work and to show
Mhm.
real meaningful stories and
Mhm.
to have people actually consume your company and its values.
Mhm.
Now, your with your experience working in branded content, branded storytelling, branded narrative, what separates a good company from a mediocre one? We can say that, or maybe not so good company.
With regard to in terms
Their approach to branded storytelling. So like
okay.
they've already decided, hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
We're on board. But
Yeah.
how can you really sense that the company truly cares about it?
Yeah, I think, so this will maybe kinda touch on something you said earlier too. Yes, it is about offering something without pretense, but also I think it's just about being clear and honest. Like, if you're selling me something, don't sugarcoat it, just tell me you're selling me something. Do you know what I mean? And let me know why and why I mean, there's so much, like, again, I am on TikTok, and sometimes it's exhausting because you think you are, like, at the micro level, like the micro influencers and the TikTok creator programs that are getting commissions based off of you know what I mean? Like, even that at that level is tiring to see that, like, okay, everyone is trying to sell me something. Like, there's no, like, true and not even true, but just, like, people who are, like, because it's always, like, laced or layered or sandwiched in between something, so they're like, maybe the strategy is to, like, start off telling a story that feels relatable, that feels normal, that feels and maybe it is, in your natural everyday routine, and then you think, like, "Oh, okay, this person is, like, extending a conversation to me as a consumer, as a viewer, and they're inviting me into their life and into their day, and that's cool, like, nice, we're connecting, social media, like, the internet, wow." And then you find out, like 30 seconds in, they're like, "And the reason I do this is because, this dog leash that" and you're like, "Dang," you're like, "I thought we were just having a
Yeah, I
conversation,"
thought we were boys. Like, what's going on?
Right, you're like, "Oh my god," maybe why didn't you just say that at the beginning? Because now I feel like I wasted my time. I don't have a dog, so it's just like
Yeah.
it's like all of that sort of pretense and, like, kind of trying to getcha, like, "Gotcha,"
I know.
sort of, and now I've got your time, and even if you don't purchase it, you're still giving me a resource with your attention, because I still make money based off of how long your watch time is and, like, all those things that are now being taken into account for, like, how people make capital as individuals, as corporations, as brands, it's very varied now than just like, "Here's a dollar, thank you, here's your product." It doesn't look like that anymore, and so I think what separates, like, and I don't know if good and bad is or good and mediocre is, it's just like what separates like intentional and thoughtful brands from ones who maybe are not as so intentional and thoughtful is their intention. You know what I mean? It's like, are you and not their intention to not sell you something because you're a company. That's literally how you keep the lights on and how you pay people is by selling me something. You know, like I get it. But it's being like forthcoming and truthful about what's happening, like not trying to pull the wool over your eyes, not trying to make it seem like you're getting something that you're not, or trying to convince me that I really need this thing when it actually has you didn't even stop to consider, you know what I mean, like what I actually need. You didn't stop to hear my story. And again, brands cannot do that with everybody. Like, hey, can we have a private conversation with you? Consumer number, 235,000. Yeah, it's like, no, they can't do that. But I think the intention behind trying to be honest and um transparent, you know what I mean, in a different kind of way, I think it changes how I interact with a brand and the type of loyalty or trust or value, even if I don't know if you saw that Volvo commercial that everybody was, like, up in arms about recently. Um, it's older from, like, 2019 or I don't know, it's
Which
not
one? I've seen a few, but I don't know.
it's
Could you elaborate?
yeah, so there's a Volvo commercial, which they eat down anyways every time they make a commercial, it's beautiful, but it was, like, this whole story about this couple who is like moving into a house and they're pregnant. They find out that they're pregnant and that they're having a baby. And it's like this beautiful, like dream sort of scape of like the future of what their life could look like and their process of like preparing to have a baby and preparing to have a home. I don't think we even see a car until like the last like 10 seconds. You know what I mean? And you see this like dual kind of like narrative going on, which you think maybe is like a flash forward of what their daughter is supposed to be like, oh, she grew up and she drives a Volvo. That's what you think is happening, right? Because they show you the story of the couple preparing for the child, preparing for their home, and then the story of this like older lady who's driving a Volvo later on in like the commercial. And then you see her like brake really hard and she almost hits somebody who's, like, crossing the street, and it's this pregnant woman who's crossing and so you're like, "Oh my god," like, you start to put the pieces together like, "Oh my god, this is the couple, this is the pregnant lady who is like, oh no, does she" so it's all this drama, and then it's like, "Oh, no, 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 the Volvo car, like, it's so good, technologically speaking, that it caught it so she's actually able to, like, make it to her doctor's appointment and give birth to her baby, and life continues because of Volvo," but it was so tastefully done because it didn't feel like again, it was, like, trying to say, like, "You need the everyone needs a Volvo," but it's like, no, if you are somebody who cares about safety and family and the safety of others, which theoretically should be everybody, but that's not the case. So they're like, "Then, yeah, maybe you should think about a Volvo because we care about that as well, and we're telling you that through the story that we're telling and by how much we're inserting ourselves or not inserting ourselves as the main character. We're not the main character. You are our consumer, the people, our community who we're like connecting with and who makes Volvo possible. Like that was and so it's like when brands can learn, and not that Volvo is perfect because it's still a corporation. So I'm sure they're doing some other stuff behind the scenes that people don't, you know what I mean? That it's money, but it's like that sort of intentionality behind, like, trying to tell a story that connects with the people who are making you possible, I think it's again, even if people don't pick it up the first time around, that you make something or that you release something, it will people will sniff it out eventually, and you'll see fall off or you'll see superficial commitment, like and it's not really actually brand loyalty as much as it's just, like, hype, that people are investing in, and I think when companies are truly excited about the stories that they're telling and really are like, no, this is something that we really want to do, no matter if it's like trendy or, something that we just think we're supposed to do to reach a certain sector or a certain pocket, proverbially and literally, of people. Um, then yeah, we'll do it. And Oakley is a good example because they for, like, Team Rubicon, which was the nonprofit that we had worked with to tell the story, um, of Don Beeson, who was the veteran that we'd followed. They had wanted to work with Team Rubicon for years, and it wasn't like, "Oh, like, this is just an opportunity because whatever," I mean, like, obviously, you can be strategic about when you release the story and when people might see it the most, and so it was Veterans Day that we were aiming there's strategy behind all that stuff, behind storytelling and connecting communities to stories, but they just were very, like it was something that they wanted to do and had talked about, but it just hadn't worked out over the years, and so this opportunity came up and they were, like, committed to it and had been for years, and particularly with, like, supporting and providing gear that supported, that sector and group of people, and even in the way that they, like, navigated everything, with the actual talent and the people and the consideration, it shows, and and it will also show if you're not actually intending to be authentic, and I've had those experiences where there are brands who are just like, it's just something to do, because they know it's a strategy to do
Just
to
another item on the
yeah,
checklist.
because I know that if I show that I care about, quote unquote, visually this group of people or this issue, that it will tap into the hearts of people who care about it, and then it will give us the opportunity to make money off of those people, even if we don't really care about it, in the process of how we're actually navigating things. And that shows not just from an internal perspective, but you can tell just the quality of storytelling. No matter if it's like super expensive, well budgeted, story, or if it's something that is like low budget, you can tell if it's real or not, even if you don't exactly know why, or you can't like totally prove it. Consumers are smarter, I think, than people give them credit for.
Yeah. e- e- I I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, please.
Um so I was actually reading about this today.
Mhm.
In terms of when you should like finally give the plug about your product.
Mm,
When you should share your offer.
mhm,
And this is all Alex Hormozy, but he's saying
mm,
you shouldn't do it. You should just like build so much trust with your audience that they're asking you to buy
mhm,
your product.
mm,
Because
mhm,
there's a subconscious part of us humans that if we keep getting given something that's
mhm,
valuable, we
mhm.
want to give something in return.
Yeah, right.
And he's talking about creating a strategy according to that.
Mhm.
Is it realistic? I don't know. Does it sound really cool? It does.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think? I mean, I think it's realistic. Something that I have more recently been thinking about is kind of the, like, ancient, like, ways of exchange. Like, before there was money, like, you just would exchange stuff that you needed. Yeah, you're like, "I have a piece of corn. What do you have?" They're like, "I have a donkey." You know what I mean? And it's like, "Okay, cool. I feel like that's valuable for what," and then you just trade, and it's like, "I have a shoelace. What do it's like that was the vibe, you know what I mean, back in the day, and I mean, I'm joking, obviously, because I don't think they had shoelaces, but just, like, things like that, that it was like, "No, I am giving you something of value that you need, and I am assessing whether or not it's valuable to me, even if it's not the same price, right? Or if it didn't cost me as much, like, it's valuable to me." And I think that sort of inherent kind of ancient way of, like, I give you something, you give me something, I give you something, that still exists in a imbalanced way, right, between a corporation and an individual consumer, but it still exists, right? And it's been taken advantage of and, like, exacerbated to extreme degrees, which is why there's, like, all these, companies that are just, like, just getting it. I mean, they're
The
making billions.
craziest profit
Oh my
margins that
god,
are
and it's like,
unnecessary.
yeah, you don't need that. You'll be fine with like 10 million. You don't need
Yeah,
50 billion. Like, what's that
exactly.
extra? So it's like it's kind of extreme the level that we've taken it, but it's still an exchange, right? And so if you're trying to, I mean, it's like all the fast fashion stuff that, people are, it's like, yeah, I'm giving you money and you're giving me a napkin in return. And it's not the same value,
Like a Chanel napkin.
Right, yes! Like, that people you lose trust in that way, and so if you are able to, maybe in that same vein, be like, "Hey, I'm not even that I'm not trying to sell you something, but I'm trying to give something that is valuable to who it's valuable for, not for everybody, because this product is not for everybody. Or if it is, then I'm clear, like, but I'm trying to give something to you that's valuable. And then people, or just promoting that you have something valuable, right? That that grow corn and somebody, you maybe aren't selling it, but somebody's like, hey man, do you think I could like exchange a bushel for, this cow that I have?
Oh my
Like that
gosh.
sort of thing. I think there's a way to do that. Similar to maybe like how Alex Hermosi is like explaining of like, you don't have to scream about it from the hills, but I also don't think there's anything wrong with saying I have something really amazing to share. You know what I
Definitely.
mean? Like that's not wrong. It's just the way that we do it, I think, is tainted, and a bit sickly.
It's trying to psychologically manipulate us.
Yes. Yeah, in
You
a
know,
way.
like what he talks about is make the prices crazy such that people perceive it as valuable, right?
Oh,
It's a
that's
psychological hijack.
yeah.
It's yeah, it makes things way too complicated, Lauren.
Mhm.
So I've spent time working at a farm,
Okay.
and I've like worked at farmers markets.
Okay.
There's a lot of bartering there, and it's so fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
literally be bartering corn and apples for like a
Yes.
burger. You know,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah, yeah.
simple, and everyone has a smile on their face after, because yeah,
Yes.
maybe like I'm giving something to you like that monetarily doesn't add
Yeah.
up, but it's the
Yeah.
perceived value. Like if we
Yeah.
think we're getting the same perceived value,
Right.
that's all that matters.
Yeah, for sure, and if it's something that you need, like, I think something like my, brother, he was in sales and, like, just ridiculously talented, I mean, just, like, across the board in life, but, like, he was really good at sales and not in a predatory way, which I really appreciated, like, I remember we would we would work from home and I would just overhear how the conversations that he would have with different customers, some that were like corporations and some that were just like normal everyday people, that were just doing their everyday life. And something that he had always sort of said when I sort of explained to him, like, just like, because it just was some of the things he would do it was just interesting. And so I would be like, hey, like, why are you doing it like that? Or why did you bring that up? Or why did your tone change here? And he's like, "I think the number one thing people do wrong is, like, they try to sell people things that they don't need,
Yeah.
and that's where you lose trust." You know what I mean? So, like, if I'm telling you that I have this, like, TV package, and you're telling me, like, "I already have one, I don't need that." You know what I mean? Like, I don't need a bundle, I already have one that, or I don't watch TV, and you're still trying to sell me a TV package? It's like, you're not really listening to me, you're not listening to the story that I'm telling you, you're not taking in the information, you're just trying to get money from me. But he was always very much like, "No," I would, sit there and figure out, like, problem solve with them around what they needed, how much they needed, and I would also give my, like, honest expert advice, and it would always make a sale because people would feel like they weren't being taken advantage of, and that they could exchange like, they weren't confused that he was a salesman, they knew he was calling to sell them something, but it was something that they, like you said, had value for and need of, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm willing to give you money and lace your pockets so that I can lace, my environment or my pocket," whatever it is that I
Hmm.
think is valuable for me.
That's shout out to your brother. I can tell
Yeah,
that his
he's the
future is
best.
going to be great.
Yeah, no, he's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and another huge thing of sales, you're right, like not another big thing about sales is just talking to someone,
Yeah,
listening to them,
right.
hearing them, not
Yeah,
listening, hearing,
yes,
having a back and forth conversation where you're
yeah,
drawing upon their points, where you're growing with them.
yeah,
That to me is the best tactic for sales. Just
mhm,
getting to know, building that trust, right? You want to work in reverse. How am
yeah,
I going to pay a bunch of money with someone if I can't trust them
right,
and
yeah,
truly feel I can trust
yeah,
them?
yeah,
Yeah, it's a whole process, Lauren.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Oh, I wanted to ask, what's next for you?
Um, yeah, I think a lot of different things. I mean, so I've been freelancing for the last almost a year, and kind of seeing what that has been like, and really just kind of like trying to learn the Columbus market and community in film has mostly been my goal, is, like, more so just, like, who's out there, who's doing what. Um, yeah, so that's been really fruitful and has kind of, made me think about just wanting to be more involved and, like, bringing more structure to, um and it sounds like such a huge thing to say. I don't know exactly what it'll look like, like, in the future, but just wanting to provide or contribute to, um well, first participate and then contribute, to, like, the scene in Columbus. So there was, like, a interview. I don't know if you know Colin and Samir? They're on YouTube.
Oh, it's such a familiar name.
Okay, you
Oh,
should
give me
check
one
them out.
second. I got it. It's such a familiar
Okay.
name. I'm gonna kill myself if I
For
don't.
sure.
Colin and Samir. Hold up. No, Lauren, you gotta give me a second. Going to the other monitor.
They have,
Colin
like, a yellow logo.
and Samir. Oh my god. Yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, they're the best. I really enjoy, 1, their interview style, how they, like, chat with people, and just the types of people that they have on there are so diverse and just kinda run the gamut. But there's one interview that's, like, really moved me, for the last year with Jacob Collier, I'm not sure how you say his last name, but
Mhm.
he's a musician and an artist, super talented. Like, some people have identified him as a prodigy, but he's made it clear that he does not identify himself as a prodigy, but he's at that level, you know what I mean? Just, like, musically and technically speaking.
That means he's a prodigy. If he doesn't want to be a prodigy, he's a prodigy.
Well, his reasoning is, like, I'm not doing like, I have had opportunities and experiences to, like, get to this level, but it's not what I have is not unique. Like, anyone can do this if they have the same opportunities and experience, which he's like, "I know everyone
I
doesn't."
hear a prodigy talking.
No, for sure. So, but that's, you'll have to take that up with him and listen to his
Yeah.
reasoning on his interview. But he said something about how his early days, like, before he kind of garnered fame and was, like, signed and things like that, how he had actually turned down, some prominent labels, namely, Quincy Jones, who's like Quincy Jones, like, you don't turn down Quincy Jones, but he did because he was like, "I had gone viral a couple times, and enjoyed I was just enjoying, like, making music in my room and participating on the internet, like, giving things to the community and, posting on YouTube and seeing that I could, like, connect with all these people all over the world. Like, I just loved doing that, and I didn't feel like at the time I was ready to stop participating, like, I was still, like, learning myself and learning my style and learning what I liked and what I didn't like. And until I was, like, sure about those things, I didn't feel like I was ready to contribute, and so I just wanted to, like, participate, in what was happening. And so he's like, "But now I feel ready to contribute," like, I can give something that will, like, actually inspire or impact other people. And he says that in much more elegantly than I'm saying it, but I think that is sort of, like, where my mindset is in terms of, like, what's next is, like, okay, I live, in Columbus, which is not a traditional film city. It's not necessarily, I would say, the most ideal place in terms of, like, where to grow, quote unquote, for film, but it is where my community is. It's where I'm, like, currently rooted right now. And so I'm like, how can I participate and, like, connect and build community with people who are here, regardless of their skill level, regardless of their history, in terms of film? And then how can I, like, learn about the needs of, like, the film community here so that I can actually, and not just film community, but also the businesses here, so that because there's a lot of independent businesses here that I'm like, like, have you guys ever thought about, like, brand stuff? You know what I mean? And storytelling and what that could look like that's not necessarily $100,000, short for you, but maybe that works for where you're at, like, there's a lot of, I feel like, education and conversation that needs to happen in Columbus that I wanna be a part of. And, hopefully, I think that will, like, lead to me contributing, like, to the film community in some way, whether that's, like, starting my own company or, like, truly, like, establishing, like, a production services, like, service here, like, because I think there's a lot of, like, again, there's a lot of indie filmmaking here and a lot of, like, corporate things, and there's a lot of companies here, I've since learned, but a lot of them I feel like have been forced to sort of, like, relegate themselves to, like, corporate stuff because that's what's available, or, like, live events, because that's what gets the bills paid and that's what keeps the lights on, but they have aspirations and dreams to, like, do, beautiful commercials and beautiful documentaries, and it's just hard to do that here because people don't see Ohio as that place, but I think Ohio could be that place, not to be New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta, but it could be its own sort of niche, and its own sort of, like, hub for storytelling in a different kind of way, and so part of my, like, hope for the future is to, like, participate for now and then contribute, to the city in a different kind of way, either before I leave or after I leave. I would love to be in New York, but, I'm trying to stay loyal to Columbus while I'm here, and then also working with, some other new companies. I have some friends out in New York who are doing some, like, really beautiful work, that I am planning and hoping to, like, work a little bit more with them in, like, a production capacity. It's still very new, but, they're amazing and they make beautiful, beautiful things. So hopefully that's something that, kinda grows as the time goes on.
So now I have two wishes for Cleveland. A, for them to get another NBA championship, and B, for companies in Cleveland to add more like corporate branded content, everything.
Yeah. Now
Um,
Cleveland and Cincinnati, they're doing actually pretty well, but Columbus is, like, in between the 2 of them.
oh, Columbus. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mixed them
yeah.
up for a second.
No, no, you're good. Cleveland and Cincinnati, they kinda hold their own a little bit
So
because
there's like a rivalry. Is there like a rivalry with Columbus and Cleveland?
I don't even know if you could say it's like a
Like some mellow
rivalry.
beef?
I don't know if it's beef. I think it's just like the city and urban infrastructure of, like, Cleveland and Cincinnati, which again are, like, the 2 bordering cities to Columbus, they they look like the way that their cities are structured, like, you know what I mean, in a planning kind of way. Like, they're more gridded than Columbus, and so buildings are closer together so you can make it look like a city. So, like, the Superman film was just filmed in Cleveland, like, all of it, because you can make it look like New York, but you didn't have to pay New York prices to film in New York, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
that's a crazy conversation in and of itself, right? People moving to different spots. Yeah, we
yeah,
won't
it's
even go there, but I
yeah,
that's
but it's
awesome that it's happening in like Cleveland, because boosting the economy as well, you
for
know.
sure, yeah, so there's I wouldn't call it beef, but I think it's more so just, like, Columbus is just growing in its own way, and it just has different challenges, to kind of overcome, that hopefully, we can, sometime and, like, become our own kind of little film hub in a different way. Um, yeah,
Lauren, I want to thank you so much for hopping on the Votary podcast today.
for
I
sure.
seriously got a lot. I can see why everyone was hyping you up as a producer.
Oh,
I
woo.
hope. What do you mean? Like what you were telling me earlier today
Oh, I was
when
like,
you
"Wait, did
started
you talk
off?
to people?"
Well, I mean, I can see why. Like from what you've told me, people are hyping
Oh,
you
that's
up.
sweet. Yeah,
And um, I'm I'm excited for you either to get deeper roots in Columbus or to branch off and fly to New York.
yeah, I think they'll both kinda happen at the same time because
A little hybrid, right?
working with the company that I'm working with right now, Blue Hour, they're amazing, and so I think that relationship will only grow stronger while I also kind of, like, figure out what's happening in Columbus as well.
Awesome, Lauren. Best of luck. Yeah, and that's a wrap.